Hi, everybody. Mitch Tanenbaum here. Thanks for joining me today. I'm going to talk about something a little different, something I haven't talked about before, and that is CMMC Level 1. So everybody talks about CMMC Level 2 and the certification process that's required in order to get certain kinds of defense contracts. But CMMC Level 1 is a much simpler chore, but it is still going to be required likely for most Defense Department contracts and potentially most federal executive branch contracts at all. So we know that CMMC Level 2 has 110 controls. CMMC Level 1 has 17 controls. So it makes it a lot simpler. Let me show you what those 17 controls are. So you know that CMMC has or 800-171, they're the same, has 14 control groups, and I'm just going to go through it one by one. So this one is access control, and in access control, the requirement is these two controls here that are in blue, limit access to authorized users and limit system access to the types of transactions that authorized users are permitted to do. So basically what it says, know who's on your system, authorize them, and only give them access to the things that they need. Pretty straightforward, I think. You ought to be doing that anyway. And the other part in access control is you want to verify and control the connections to and from external systems and how they're used. So you're trying to be careful about what gets put on systems that you don't control. And then you also want to make sure that there's no CUI being posted to publicly accessible systems. So that's pretty straightforward too. And of course, for CMMC Level 1, there should not be any CUI that requires CMMC Level 2. So in theory, this should be like kind of a doesn't apply, but they want you to make sure that you understand that you can't do that. So now if we go into the identification and authentication control group, there's two controls here, same as, by the way, in CMMC Level 2. First one is you got to identify the users and processes and devices that are accessing your system. Doesn't seem unreasonable. And the second one is you got to authenticate or verify the identities as a prerequisite. That means they got to have user IDs and passwords. That's pretty straightforward. And in order to verify them, you can't have shared user IDs. That's an important distinction. Some folks do that, and that's not allowed. Next is media protection in section 3.8. And the control that applies there is you have to limit access to CUI to authorized users. Well, again, since in theory for level 1, there is no CUI access, that means that those folks should have no access to any CUI. Again, seems pretty straightforward. In terms of physical protection, you got 4 controls there that apply. The first one is limit physical access, like to your building. And the challenge, of course, when people work from home, that includes working from home, to systems and equipment that, by the way, includes your kids, your spouse, your significant other, your gardener, your butcher, whatever. Escort visitors and monitor what they're doing. That's more of a challenge at home for many folks, but some people have a dedicated office space where they can close the door and keep the rugrats out. Other people do not, so you got to make sure that you keep unauthorized people off the system. Escort visitors, as I said, maintain audit logs of visitors. That's really an interesting challenge when it comes to home. We haven't gotten any clarity there, but that's what's required. And control and manage physical access device, which could be a biometric, could be a key, could be a card, whatever. You should be doing that anyway, but if you're not, you need to be doing that for this. Moving on to section 13, which is system and communications protection. It says that you got to monitor and protect communications, i.e. information that's transmitted or received by the system at the external boundaries and key internal boundaries of the organization. So external boundaries means you have some kind of firewall that stops the digital riffraff from coming in and controls what's going out. Many people do not have a firewall at home, so that becomes a challenge. Now, some ISPs do provide some form of firewall, but unfortunately the ISP has access to it. So that's a problem by itself. But this is doable for a relatively modest amount of money, and hopefully the ISP has something and you can claim that you're being compliant with this. And the other control in this section is to sub-network networks for publicly accessible system components. So that what that means is if you have a public web server that's sitting on the same physical network or in the office, that they are logically separated or physically separated, either one is fine, such that traffic can't pass from the publicly facing server to the internal servers, that there's kind of a one-way door, and you can go out from your internal servers to the web servers, but can't come in. And the last section, 314, is system information integrity. We got 4 controls here again. These are also pretty basic. You should be doing them, but maybe you're not. So the first thing is identify bugs in a timely manner. Number 2, and we'll get to fixing that. Oh, I guess it's right here. It's actually not only do you identify the bugs, but you correct them. So that means that, for example, when Microsoft puts out their monthly patch release, those get done, including the computer at home. And also, by the way, that includes the phones, if the phones have federal contract information on them. And then provide protection from malicious code. That means probably if you have cyber insurance, you have some kind of endpoint detection and response software, or you have managed endpoint detection and response software. That's what they're talking about here. That for that software I just talked about, .4 says you're going to update that regularly. And .5 says you're going to perform periodic scans of the systems and real-time scans of files. Well, most of this endpoint detect and response software will automatically do that. There's not anything you need to do to cause that to occur. So these are the 17 controls that are required for CMMC Level 1. If you have questions about these, please reach out to us. But remember, if you have employees who are working from home, who are subject to these requirements, who use their own computers, who use their own phones, these 17 controls apply to them just as much as they apply to you. So, think about that. That's probably, of the 350,000 defense contractors, that's going to be most of them for whom this applies, and likely other. We're already seeing the Department of Education and General Services Administration including these kind of requirements in some contracts. So if you're not already doing this, now would be a great time to do it, especially on the stuff that you don't control, the BYOD devices. And of course, if you have questions, please reach out to us. Until next time, stay safe.
Turnkey Cybersecurity and Privacy Solutions offers the complete cybersecurity program for small to medium-sized